Hey guys, Yips here, coming out with another video, and today I want to make a guide on how to effectively use your Destro Warlock cooldowns on a mythic encounter. Now, this is by far the most important video I will make all raid tiers, so if you are a Warlock and you are progressing Sanctum, I highly recommend you stick around and take a look on how to effectively use your cooldowns on varying boss fights. We'll take a look first at some training dummy examples, we'll talk a little bit about the cooldown interactions and how they work together, and then we'll go into some actual bosses and see it in action. So, what cooldowns does Destro Warlock have and how do they all mesh together? So, you have your Summon Infernal, which is a ability that you can use on a 3-minute cooldown. Summons a guy from the sky, he pulses AoE damage, hits some stuff. It's okay DPS, not amazing, but he generates you soul shards, which lets you cast more chaos bolts, more rain of fires. He's very good. Your next cooldown is your Dark Soul, gives you a 30% crit amp. It's just a flat damage increase, lasts 20 seconds. And then you have your Soul Rot, and whether you're playing Naya or Dreamweaver, it will give you a benefit where Dreamweaver gives you increased haste and Naya gives you increased mastery. So all of these things, in a way, are damage amplifiers. So you want to be thinking on boss encounters how to use them together to get as big as an amplifier as possible in order to do the most damage during those limited time segments. So how does that look on most boss encounters in this particular raid tier? What you want to be doing is, when you are a Destro, a lot of the times there will be two targets, so we'll mark them. We have Skull and we have Box. Skull is the kill target, is the boss, and Box is an ad that spawns a little bit later into the encounter, let's say 20 seconds in. So we have Box spawning 20 seconds into the encounter, and we have Skull as the main boss. How would our cooldowns look in an opener like this? And this happens on so many boss fights. It happens on Fate Scribe, it happens on Eye of the Jailer, it happens on the boss that summons the orbs, Remnant I think his name is. So many encounters have this situation happening. This is how you want to be playing your opener. So start with your standard Incinerate, to Cataclysm, Conflagrate, Infernal. And now what I want you to look is Infernal lasts 30 seconds. The ad spawns roughly 15 to 20 seconds into the encounter. You do not want to load your Dark Soul, your Soul Rot, and your Ruby before your Infernal hits that 20-second mark. And that is because if you pop your Dark Soul or your Soul Rot early, odds are it's going to fade by the time that that first ad is active. So you want to make sure that you're lining up your Dark Soul and your Soul Rot with that ad spawn timer when you're pressing your Havoc, because Havoc is something that you want to think about as like a 70+% damage amplifier as long as you're running the conduit duplicitous Havoc. If you're not, it's a 60% multiplier. If you are, it can be much, much more. So you want to be making sure that you're using your Dark Soul and your Soul Rot later into your Infernal so it overlaps with that Havoc window. So let's take a good look again and see how that sort of an opener would look. So without the Infernal here, we'd be doing the Incinerate, Conflagrate, I should have done first, into Cataclysm, and then you just want to cast a few abilities. You don't want to be using too many Conflag charges because it's going to be working against you in terms of you want to have them available for your Havoc window. You would refresh your Immolates, you would Dark Soul at 20 seconds, press your Ruby so you have it active for the ad set, and just before you Havoc, you're going to Soul Rot, Havoc, Conflag, and then go into your Chaos Bolt window and just dump. And you can get so many bolts off in this window, especially with that Summon Infernal active that's generating you more shards. Saving your Conflag charges, saving all of those cooldowns up for when that moment happens. And so we'll wait again for the Infernal to come back up. We'll wait for all these cooldowns to line back up again to show that again. But again, I really want to emphasize using these cooldowns together when you are pressing your Havoc. Don't blow your load too early and not have your damage imps available for you when you're using your Havoc window. Your Soul Rot, as Dreamweaver, will cover your Havoc only. Soul Rot, your Haste Flowers last 12 seconds, your Havoc lasts 12 seconds. If you're playing Naya and you're using the Growth Invigoration, you can use your Soul Rot on pull because you will get a 30-second amp on that Mastery bonus that will last throughout your Infernal, so it's actually better to use it early. So we have about a minute here, and we'll talk a little bit about some other small things before we get into the next amp. So that's typically how most openers work in this boss fight or on this particular raid. Sometimes you're going to be using those cooldowns a little bit earlier, like a boss in the 9 where the two bosses are available instantly. You'll be pressing everything on cooldown in the opener. On bosses where it's more single target oriented and you want your cooldowns back up faster, generally you'll be using everything in the first 5 seconds of the encounter, but on many bosses, and I'll show you in some actual kill videos, you'll be using your cooldowns in this particular fashion. So Infernal's coming back up, my Ruby's coming back up, my Dark Soul's coming back up, have my Soul Rod available. I'm ready to do Gigadam. So again, thinking about the boss encounter, ad spawns roughly 15-20 seconds into the encounter. I'm going to be using my Infernal. I want to press my Dark Soul 20 seconds in. Use my Ruby. Get that buff up for my Havoc window. Soul Rot, Havoc, Blast. That's how you always want to think. Whenever you have your Soul Rot available and you're going to be using a Havoc, it should always be Prep, Soul Rot, Havoc, Blast. Okay? So let's go. Incinerate, Cataclysm, Conflagrate, Summon Infernal. Not using too many Conflag charges here, just chilling a little bit. If you want a pot, you can do it at the 25-second mark of your Infernal. Just chilling. Dark Soul, 20 seconds left on my Infernal. Cast one more of these bad boys. Refresh my Immolates, prepping for that damage amp. Ruby, Soul Rot, Havoc, Blast. Lots of backdraft charges. Many Conflag charges. Big damn. And this is going to massively increase your damage if an ad is going to be spawning later into the encounter, okay? It's much better to get those damage imps off during your Havoc than having them fall off into your Havoc and only having your Infernal up for that specific burn scenario. So now, looking at that, let's jump into some actual boss encounters to take a look on how that sort of will set up on some of these mythic boss encounters. So I have two examples for you guys here. I have Remnant and Eye of the Jailer on mythic difficulty. So let's take a look and see how this would function. So exact same thing as I showed on the training dummies. We're going to be Infernaling, and I want you guys to watch that 20-second mark on that Infernal, see that I'm Dark Souling, see that I'm getting my Ruby active, and watch how I prep for those ad spawns. So 20 seconds, boom, press my Dark Soul. Ad spawns. Getting my Immolates out on the ads. Soul Rot on the Suffering, that's when you're able to cleave. Into Havoc, and then bang. 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 Get them Chaos Bolts out. Bang. You know what I'm saying? Big damn. Okay, so that's how the opener looks on fights where you have those sort of moments happening, where you have the ad spawning later into the encounter. Really important that you're overlapping your cooldowns in that specific way. I will show it again on Eye of the Jailer. Now, the question comes, how do you use your cooldowns after moments like that on the boss encounter? Well, I know that my Infernal is coming up in 3 minutes, and on this particular encounter an ad set spawns at 3 minutes, so that works really well. I will look at how long the rest of the boss fight will take, how many more Infernal uses I can get on the rest of the boss encounter. If it's only 1, I'll find the optimal time to use that with my Dark Soul. If it's 2, I'll probably press it on cooldown so I have it up at the end of the boss fight. Sort of depends on how the fight works. On this particular encounter, it ends up working out to where I save my 2 minutes for my second set of 3-minute cooldowns in order to absolutely body the boss and the ads, and so you'll see how that works out here. You also want to be thinking about your Soul Rot timing. So your Soul Rot will always come up with 1 minute left, roughly, into your Dark Soul window, and 2 minutes and 1 minute respectively left on your Infernal window. And on boss encounters, sometimes it's really exceptionally important that regardless of what is happening, that you use your Soul Rot on cooldown in order for it to line up with those cooldowns. However, on Remnant, we're actually going to skip a Soul Rot, and you'll see that here, because it lines up with an ad set spawning. And on this particular encounter, it is much better to get that Soul Rot with an ad set spawning than it is to get that Soul Rot on cooldown twice on the boss itself. So let's take another look at that. And a little bit of a later pull here. So if I jump to here, this should be it. So we're going to see that opener again. And then I want you to focus on the cooldowns usage in between the opener as well as the Havoc management. So we'll jump to that sort of ad set thing again. Here we miss a little bit, but that's okay. We're not too focused about the opener. We saw that already. So we missed one of the orbs. That's just RNG and Maluko. So my opener got a little bit scuffed there because we obviously didn't hit one of the orbs that I was precasting on, but that's okay. Moving ahead, let's take a look at that Soul Rot timing. So here that same ad set spawns that we're just havocing, and we're skipping this Soul Rot. So we skip this Soul Rot here. Moving throughout the boss fight, just doing my standard stuff, not worried too much about rotation. And here's the ad set where I use my Soul Rot. So if I had Soul Rotted on cooldown, I would have my Soul Rot coming roughly back up in about 30 seconds from now. But it's up and available for this ad set because I chose to save it, which is better for this particular encounter. A lot of the times that is not the case. A lot of the times you do want to send it on cooldown because you want it to line up with your Dark Soul. But here it is just better for me to use it in this sort of a way because, as you can see, since I Soul Rot here, my Soul Rot has 47 seconds left, my Infernal has a minute left, they are going to be aligned. And it's really important on this particular encounter that we align those specific cooldowns. And I believe this pull here was a wipe. This is actually not a wipe. Okay. Sorry about that. So we'll jump back. So this is the next set of cooldowns. This is where we saved our 2 minutes for our Infernal, and you'll see similar themes to the opener. So just waiting for those ad sets, holding my cooldowns, holding absolutely everything, ready to blast, thinking about how I want to prep for it with my immolates and so on and so forth. Ads are spawning, and I want to prep for that juicy Havoc window when my damage is amped so high. Have a lot of backdraft charges saved. Press everything. Suffering, that's when the ads become available to hit. Soul Rot, Havoc, bang. Every time. Soul Rot, Havoc, bang. Soul Rot, Havoc, bang. Press my pot. And absolutely annihilate the ad set. Let's look how much damage we did there. Where were we? Alright, ad set spawnings. I'm not even on the meter. You don't even see me. Oh, there I am. 1.3 million. Havoc. Where do I go from 1.3 million to? During this 12-second window. 1.3. 1.5. 1.6. 1.7. I am doing a ridiculous amount of DPS. Because I prepped properly, I had my cooldowns overlapped, and I thought about it from the start of the counter, how I wanted to use them in between in order to get them to the specific moment. And that's how you want to be thinking about every single boss encounter. So let's jump to another one. Let's jump to Eye of the Jailer on Mythic difficulty. So this boss fight is exactly the same. I think I even messed this up a little bit to where I don't do my Soul Rot timing properly, but you want to be using your cooldowns later. You you absolutely have to be, when these ads are spawning late, using your Dark Soul, using your Soul Rot, using your Ruby to where they align with your Havoc CD. So after this thing happens here, we're going to go ahead and see that ad coming down as soon as these chains are over, and you'll see I have my damage amps active for it, and you'll see how effective that will be at being able to do a lot of DPS. Have all my damage amps active for this Havoc window and able to absolutely pop off. Now it's a little bit clunky here because you have to be dodging this beam, which I do so with my port. But getting those Havoc windows with those cooldowns is 100% better. And I could have played that. I could have played that a little bit better for sure, looking back at it. But the idea is really similar. And on this boss fight, I'll talk a little bit about how to use your second set of cooldowns because it is a little bit funky. And you do want to make sure that you're using your Soul Rot on cooldown on this fight regardless of when it is. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you see as soon as my Soul Rot comes up, I'm like prioritizing that. Like you see I'm already hitting it with like 2 seconds left because I need to use it. Cataclysm, I don't press it. Okay, there we go. I cancel to press it because I know it's important. I need to use that Soul Rot at that 1 minute mark because, like I said earlier, a lot of the time you really need to be using that Soul Rot so it's up for your next windows even if it's not optimal at that moment. It just so happened on the other boss that it was optimal for me to delay it. So here we're going to be showing how to use your second set of 2 minutes on this fight on Mythic difficulty. It's a little bit awkward, so hopefully you guys can stick with it and kind of follow it in terms of how it's supposed to be used. I might have messed up this encounter in terms of forgetting to use Havoc. I don't remember. But the idea still stays the same. Just don't mess up like me and remember to use Havoc and it'll work out really well for you. So what's going to end up happening is we're hitting this ad and we're generating debuff stacks. And at a certain point, the boss is going to make a switch to where we have to go to the other ad and hit him. And Havoc has an infinite range, which means you can Havoc this guy, gateway across, and attack the other ad and get duplicated DPS. So you'll see I Havoc, I Ruby from afar, I Ruby the low target, blink over, Havoc, or sorry, Chaos Bolt, and just go in. And I get a little bit of extra damage. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but it's that little bit of extra min-max that you can do that is something that's really going to set you apart, right? Because your 2 minutes do line up there pretty well. You're not saving them for very long. And you see, I could have done it a little bit better. It was just a very niche idea that I only got to try a couple times. So I press my Ruby. My Ruby's going to be following me as I take this gateway. I Havoc. I Dark Soul. I should Soul Rot here and just be spamming bolts. But something ends up happening to where I don't do that. I guess I press my Soul Rot and I immolate. But I should have just been spamming bolts because I think I had a little bit more time left on my Havoc on the other side. But either way, that's how you want to be using your 2 minutes. And that's why I pressed my Soul Rot right away at 1 minute, because I wanted it to be back for this specific moment. And then for the rest of the encounter, I'm saving my 3 minutes for my next set of 2 minutes, which you can see happen here. Everything lines up, my Soul Rot, my Infernals. And you can see me absolutely pop off on the metas. And then with this cooldown lineup, you'll have all your cooldowns come back again during the last phase, and you'll be able to do a lot of DPS on the boss encounter. So, Destro Warlock cooldowns, it can get a little bit complicated, and it can get a little bit complex on some of these mythic boss encounters. But what I want you guys to really take away from this is you want to be thinking about cooldowns between the first 0 to 60 seconds of the boss encounter, how to min-max those, and then think about when your next large set of cooldowns come back up, when your next Infernal comes back up, when your next Dark Soul comes back up, when your next Soul Rot comes back up at that later stage of the boss encounter. And you want to make sure all of those things are lined up together. And then in between those big moments, basically between those 3 minutes, how can you use your Soul Rots, your Havocs, and your Dark Souls during those intermission stages to do as much damage possible with them, to where when you're at that 3 to 4 minute stage and your Infernals back up, that they line up with that and you can do a large amount of damage. So hopefully this was a little bit instructive on how to use your cooldowns on a mythic setting as a Destro Warlock. Hopefully it gives you guys some good ideas on how to do overlaps well, how to do your Havocs well, how to play. And I will make more boss videos in the future. I just felt like it was really important to get this sort of a guide up so you guys had an idea of what I'm talking about when I say using your cooldowns effectively as a Destro Warlock. It's just so important to have that baseline as an idea before you even want to be thinking about how to perform properly. So thanks for watching. This has been Yips making the Destro stuffs, and yeah, have a lovely day.